Well, all right. Well, here you go again, ladies and gentlemen, and to my Facebook family out there. I love you. Thank you for tuning in here on Facebook. This is Darrell Nichols, and this is the Darrell Show. And my lovely host, hopefully, will be joining us here shortly. But I think I've got a really, really exciting and dynamic um, conversation that you're going to be, I think, really privileged in some respects to participate in. Um, I've got tonight's guest is Michael Lee Hill. And for, I know a lot of you out there, by some of the responses I've already gotten from the posting, are aware of who Michael Lee Hill is and what we're going to be talking about. But the subtopic for tonight's show with Michael Lee Hill is, can you handle the truth? And I'm going to say this in all candor as much as I can. Now, I had the privilege of meeting Michael about 3 years ago for the first time, and I was attending a ceremony at Serpent Mound, and I tend to go there every year now for the last 3 years. And there'd be sometimes actually two events each year. There's going to be another one coming up here in just a few weeks, where Michael and I both will be there participating in a peace summit. And again, this is organized around the solar eclipse that's happening this August 19th, 20th, and 21st. And he and I both will be speaking there and participating. But the first time I met Michael, I went there, and I remember it was late that evening, and I'd gone through a lot of the things going on in my first visit there, and there's a lot of speakers that are talking about things. And so late that night, I was out, and there was a group of people that was standing around a little fire outside of the chalets that are out there, and I just joined the conversation. And it was just a really dynamic discussion, and there was maybe just 7 or 8 of us that were there talking, but it was great, and then the energy was great, the vibrations were great, and of course the whole ceremony was great that day. And I happened to jump in, and at some point in the conversation, I got to talk about rainbow sherbet, about why I like sherbet. And those of you who know me as a diversity practitioner, you know that my story about sherbet is my favorite ice cream, although it's not an ice cream, but how all those colors mixed together, and every single spoonful is different, and every single spoonful is delicious. And so there's not too much green, not too pink, it's all just perfect blended the way it is, and every spoonful is different. And that really resonated with the group. And then I learned that night we were talking about I thought jokingly about the clan of the Rainbow Warriors. Little did I know. And that was the beginning. And as recent as this past March, when we were at Serpent Mound for the Water and Peace Summit, Michael and I had an opportunity to really sit down and have a conversation that got so deep, so fast. It's what I call, and just excuse my vernacular, but this is just the way I say it. It was so deep. It was like, this is like we're talking about down at below the bottom of the ocean deep. This was like lower than well doo-doo deep. We went there, but I love the guy, love his heart, love his passion, and he has got such an interesting story to share. And I won't even call it a story because it's beyond opinion. It's beyond supposition. He's got a lot of material facts that can back up where he's been, who he is, and what he's got to share. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure, my honor, and indeed a plum pleasing pleasure and privilege to introduce to you and reintroduce to others, Mr. Michael Lee Hill. Are you there, Michael?
Yes, I am. And thank you. That was a very nice introduction. And yeah, I remember the first time we met, man. It was like meeting an old friend from a past life or something. And I remember you actually gifted me a really nice piece of shungite. It's a necklace. And I still wear it to this day. But yeah, the whole thing about rainbow sherbet, we talked last time, because we're talking about the Native American Indians. We can get into who they truly are, what's going to be revealed here. But the Rainbow Warriors, I got my name, and it's Rainbow Warrior Eagle. And so, yeah, it's all coming together, ain't it?
It really is. And by the way, because that following day, you had gifted me something as well, and I've got it here. I'm showing my Facebook fans, and I've got the disc that you gave me that night.
Right on, right on.
Yeah, and I'm going to show them also the other 2 discs that I acquired in March from you and Lynn. And
yes,
we're going to, I hope we get a chance to talk about those. And one of those, of course, is the 432 hertz image disc.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's been a really cool thing, and I'm glad to be able to share some Anunnaki-inspired technology, frequency-oriented. So yeah, we can get into that.
We can. And now I'm going to lay a little bit more ground work if you don't. So I'm going to read a brief bio for some of the other people that aren't familiar with your background that are listening, so they just get a little flavor for, I guess, the broad range of some of your experiences and a lot of things that just kind of really make this particular interview that much more unique.
Cool.
So again, tonight, Michael Lee Hill, he's an award-winning musician. He's a filmographer and a UFO experiencer. His footage of the Lake Erie UFOs has created a Billy Meier-like buzz, and Michael seems to have developed an intuitive relationship with these craft. Now, in his home state right here in Ohio, he's been cataloging video after video of UFOs over Lake Erie, and we need to talk about that. But if you've not seen his footage of UFO craft or these orbs or these lights over Lake Erie, again, they're phenomenal, and there's so much material out there that I would encourage everybody to do your due diligence and actually just do yourself a treat and a favor and just Google it and look at some of this video footage. It is phenomenal, and arguably some of the best, actually one of them, I think, and it actually has been kind of proclaimed as the best video footage available anywhere on the planet, of like 10, 15 minutes of what is going on over Lake Erie with multiple orbs or lights forming and multiplying and grouping. And we can get into that. But so that's one particular thing. And also the phenomena, it consists almost entirely of these pulsating orbs of light. They're unusual lights, and they change colors. They're converging. They're separating over the lake. And then, of course, there are stories of unexplained phenomena that date back over 150 years. And so maybe it might not be a brand new phenomena in that other people around that area have experienced it, but it's particularly among the indigenous peoples. There are stories that have persisted over a century and a half now, particularly here in North America with North American tribes. So, and he's got an indigenous connection, several actually, and we're going to get into a little bit of that as well about how his revelation occurred to where he began to connect of these other dots and see how he was connected to places like Serpent Mound and the mound builders and the people of the Adena. And we can also talk about his blood type and the blood, some things that actually became exposed when he was on a program with UFO hunters. That's a well-documented program about some of the things, that footage that he had, but it got a lot deeper when the producers of that show decided to do some blood tests between him and some other people who were experiencing similar phenomena. And that's going to be a very compelling and interesting aspect of this conversation as well, so you don't want to miss that. So here, we're on the Darrell Show, www.truthcatradio. If you want to call in, again, we're going to be taking more questions at the bottom half of the hour. It's a 2-hour program, and that number is 714-598-3125. And you can just listen in here on truthcatradio.com. So that in a nutshell, and again, I think I'm really kind of doing you a disservice because there is so much length and breadth to what you've experienced. And again, I just appreciate your heart and how you've gone about trying to share this information with other people. But, it's not a conversation that you sit down with a coffee shop. It's kind of hard to start a conversation like this. Where do you start?
Oh, man, I don't even try anymore, to be honest with you. Actually, it's kind of been putting me into a weird position because I'm starting to realize the learning curve. I guess I don't want to just keep repeating myself, but for people that's never even heard my story, I got to tell something, So I've been struggling with this a little bit because the truth of the matter is I could do one whole presentation on nothing but the Lake Erie UFOs, and then how that led being on the History Channel, as you said, and having my blood work done. That was by a Harvard professor, and how that led to actually meeting the Anunnaki face to face, and then gets into a whole nother thing. I could do a whole presentation on what I've learned from them in the crash course I got, and how it leads to the Native American Indians and the mound builders and them truly being the remnants of the Atlanteans. So I'm having a little rough time. So I went to the big woman upstairs and I said, what should I do? And instantly she said, speak like they know exactly what you're talking about. And if they don't, send them to michaelleehill.net.
Oh, yeah, it's a good place to start. Just tell it like it is.
Yeah. So
if people catch on or they'll catch up.
Yeah, this is the first time we'll give this a chance.
Oh, there we go.
I I'm a testimony to the telling him like it is hurts. I was trying to do some research and information, that my brother sent me, and oh my gosh, I haven't had a headache like this in a long time.
There's a
I'm
lot,
talking
isn't there?
heavy duty. So for me and the listeners in my boots, be gentle. I am so excited to hear your story, mainly because Darrell was so hyped yesterday when he was talking about, we got Michael Hill coming on. You gotta do your research on him, man. He's just a heavy hitter and interesting story.
It was Michael, because my sister, she even suggested that I get somebody else on to help me interview you, and she's never done that. She said he said he's so heavy, and when Shelly tells you that you make her head hurt, that is a high compliment. If you make her gray matter strain, so
it's been a strange trip, let me tell you. So
well, she'll be meeting you. She'll be meeting you. She's going to be making every effort to be here at Serpent Mountain for the last 2 days of the ceremony, and then after that, I think a lot of things will be clear for her because she's much better open close in person.
Oh, right on. Well, I appreciate the chance to talk here, and I'm glad you're going to be at Serpent Mound. It's really getting some steam rolling behind it, isn't it?
Yes.
It really is. I think I think there's over 2,000 people already that are interested in being there. Close to the last time I checked, it was about 400 people that committed to be in attendance. And this is really, it's a unique event, and it's one of a kind. They've never done this. And of course, we've never had a full total solar eclipse, across the United States in over 100 years. And so I remember when Terry approached me about it, it was just a phenomenal idea. And it's going to be what it's going to be. But and we'll see on the other side of it what it becomes as we build toward the next total solar eclipse 7 years later. I'm talking to some other people about that. But yeah, you got a comment?
Yeah, man, my spider sense is going off. I don't know what's gonna happen, but man, if you've ever wanted to reveal yourself, this would be the time when everyone's looking up, So just look up.
Yeah, and I know you're going to be. I think you've got 2 or 3 different lectures that you're going to be doing. And 2 lectures, and you're going to be performing as well because you're a musician. But
yeah, and I'm really excited about that because I'm going to be performing in 432, which is a subject we can get into. But even above and beyond all that, I'm going to be, I guess, hosting a Skywatch while we're there and get all of us out there and put some good energy and ask for a low flyby, please.
And I'm bringing my night vision goggles. I've got some military grade NBPS 7B. Yeah,
awesome.
And so we're going to see even the stuff they don't want us to see. We're going to see it.
Right on, man. I'm excited.
Oh, by the way, I got a quick question for one of my Facebook fans. Donna Cook wants to know. She saw these the discs, and she wanted to know if it was quantum scalar energy pennant technology.
That's actually exactly what I was told the image is a quantum accelerator. It's what I did was I started to be guided into what are the most cosmic harmonious frequencies. And the granddaddy of all frequencies is 432. And it's really interesting because a Nazi scientist took us into a musical standard of A equals 440 hertz. And make a long story short, there's a new type of science equipment called cymatics, and it's truly making the invisible visible. It can make frequency visible. What it truly is a big vat of water, and I hired them to image my guitar but tune properly to A equals 432. We can get into why this is important, but here's the deal: is A equals 432 creates the most beautiful complexity and dimensionality, and that's what that image is. But if my guitar would have been tuned to 440, it looked like a puddle of mud. At 440, it doesn't carry any symmetry or complexity or yes, yeah. So that's what that image is, and I started putting it into quartz crystal glass, and it's wrapped in copper, and they're very powerful, subtle energy devices for clearing energy, or it's a nice paperweight too. It's whatever you want to do with it.
I tell you what, I got 3 of them, and I walk around with them in my pocket. I would
Right
never
on.
using one as a paperweight. And we can even. I know that you're quite capable because not only do you, you're an experiencer, and actually the real McCoy, but now you've got a lot of knowledge about the math behind it, and the not even just the math, the principles behind the way things work. And so when you mentioned 432, I know that we can break that down to 144 going to 288, and it's a derivative, and we end up at the speed of light.
Yeah, it's super cool because this stuff. I'm a super geek at heart, and everyone knows Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared.
Right.
But quantum physicists tell us that everything is both particle and wave. Well, that's only the particle part of the equation. It's right there, m equals mass. Well, when you find out 432 squared is the speed of light within 1% accuracy, it's truly the only frequencies that become C in E equals mc squared. So if you think about it, it's 432 base frequencies squared becomes C squared times mass equals energy. These frequencies align one with the actual toroidal physics of how our universe is created. Like Tesla said, it's really interesting stuff.
Our universe, because it breaks down, because it goes to the micro and the micro. So you
Indeed.
can, from even the smallest thing of particles, or explode that into the outer universe about spirals. And I know they're related to the golden mean, the Fibonacci spiral.
Yes.
And I think actually you and Bobby Irving had the conversation. Y'all just blew me away. When you bring music theory, vibration frequencies, rhythms, cycles into it, and actually it just kind of tied up a lot of things in a nice little bow tie where you can see these relationships. And the last thing I thought that I would hear from you and Bobby Irving is talking about how 432 in music terms, but how that also relates to the organization of the Fibonacci spiral or the golden mean or existence itself. That just really blew me away. And I would tell people, if you want to go into detail about that, we may not go to that level here because again, that's a separate learning experience in itself. But
that might be a whole show in itself.
It really would. It really would, and I was going to bring Bobby, was going to be on. He was actually up here, and he was performing up in Cleveland about 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately, I couldn't get away to go see him. I was going to spend an afternoon with him, but work got in the way. But, man, between you and Bobby Irving and Serpent Mound, there's no telling what's possible, but there's a lot to be learned. And I think, actually, I was listening to one of your previous interviews, and I've read quite a bit about you and some research, listened to some of your previous interviews with other people in other networks, and there's just so many takeaways to come away with. But it does appear that this is a time where there's been a revealing of some of these technologies and some of this information that has been right here in front of our faces. And I think you went even back to ancient Sumeria and said it was right there. They try to tell us then. And
yes, indeed. Even the 432 subject, right out of the gate, a lot of people know in Sumeria, humanity came out with full functioning culture, law, government, mathematics, timekeeping. Well, look at how many seconds is in 12 hours, because you'll find out the ancients gave us this idea of multiplying, dividing whole units by 12, whether it's 12 inches in a foot, 12 hours in a day, 12 apostles, 12, 12, 12, 12. Well, see how many seconds is in 12 hours. It's 43,200. It's they've been trying to guide us into these frequencies, and our own system of timekeeping is actually based on 432 math and physics, and there ain't no way around it, and to me, that should be comforting, because I see so many people throwing the Anunnaki under the proverbial bus and saying that they're the ones behind the secret societies. And we can get into why that's not the case, and I can prove it. And there's a whole other side to this story, and it ties in with the Native American Indians. And, what does the Native American Indians have to do with the Illuminati and the New World Order? Nothing. Matter of fact, the Native American Indians have suffered under the wheels of that evil machinery more so than any other race on this planet. And the largest genocide on this planet was committed against them by the New World Order. So there's a whole nother side to the story, and I really appreciate the chance to speak on it.
Well, and maybe we'll go there, because if I were to just to take Michael Lee Hill, and if I'm trying to find, maybe, because we just got 2 hours in this program, and find a few slices of this pie that would probably be more appropriate for my audience or our listening audience to digest. One place to start, people are always fascinated with the idea of extraterrestrials, UFOs. And so we kind of, and for me, it's just what's so, it's just what it is. And so I don't necessarily get too overly fascinated with it, because I'm a bit beyond that. And a lot of our people, and of course, a lot of people that, you and I both know, people at Serpent Mound, we are already there. But a lot of people says, he said he's met Anunnaki, and we talk about Anunnaki as if it's like passe, as if, yeah, of course everybody has. And my sister would tell you, we've been some places and we've met people. I've had other people just flat out tell me we're Pleiadians, and my sister and I have met other people that we're pretty daggum sure they ain't from here. You know what I'm talking about, sis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we met some. And other people had technology that was so advanced that they will not even release to the mainstream media. It says, where did you get that from? And I call it 23rd century technology, but it's here today. And I've met some people who have that. So let's begin there. If we were to begin a discussion, and we didn't even, and maybe A.R. Borden, is it A.R. Borden?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he became a father figure to me. That'd be a great place to start.
Yeah.
And you can share that the Facebook group that me and some other people, that this gentleman, who A.R. Borden was the head of reverse engineering division for the NSA. And he also was the one that led their remote viewers group. And he's truly, if extraterrestrials come down, they're going to want to talk to A.R. Borden, not Trump. They're going to talk to people who understand new life physics. And he was the person. And after I met the Anunnaki in 2008, which is really interesting because, as you said, I was on the UFO Hunters show, and the episode is called Alien Contact. And in it, you'll notice that Bill Burns, out of nowhere, he said, I think you're being groomed by a behind-the-scenes group, that you're being given a crash course and being led to meet your extraterrestrial higher selves. I had no clue what he was talking about, because at that time I'd never met the Anunnaki, and I wasn't part of the, this NSA group yet. Sure enough, everything he predicted came to be. And I often wonder, who is Bill Burns? Because he knew all of this was going to happen before I did. I can tell you that.
I had a similar story from Maxwell Jordan, not like yours, but he had an experience with somebody who told him what was going to happen. And over the next 2 to 3 years, everything that gentleman told him and about his origin happened with Maxwell Jordan. And so it's not unheard of, other than people that, if you're just really too close-minded, that you just really can't, like I said, the name of this program, Can You Handle the Truth? So I'm telling all the listeners, you really need to kind of drop some of your paradigms and some of your preconditioned thinking and really wrap your head around this conversation, because, if you've never heard of Michael Lee Hill before, you need to get down with this and really kind of reconsider what you thought you knew, because the world and the reality is not really what most of us believe and understand it to be. So, and again, I read some of your articles and some of your material, and I was really fascinated and compelled when I read about your first encounter when you met the Anunnaki. And as a matter of fact, when you said that you described them physically, what they appeared to be, but initially they wouldn't even allow you to see their face. You couldn't see their.
That pretty much what I found out is that's a common thing with them, that there is pretty much a stipulation. I forget which one, the family member that made it, but humans were allowed to see their true faces. So it actually kind of sounds like when you hear a description of the jinn or the jinn, that they have this like smoke or a shadow that kind of comes up over their face. And to me, I couldn't see their face. And one of the first things I asked him, I said, "Can I see your face?" And he said, "No, you'll have to wait in the morning to see our true faces." I thought that was an interesting response because, first of all, he didn't say, "What are you talking about? You can't see our faces." He knew exactly what I was saying. And so the next day, when the daylight came by, these two individuals were walking by my tent. And sure enough, the minute I looked at them, I go, that was the person that was in the tent. And I'll never forget, he looked at me, he said, "Good morning, Commander Michael." And at that time, I had no idea what a commander is. And that word actually rubbed me wrong for a while because it just reeks of hierarchy. But then I learned it has nothing to do with that. It's those that have learned the power of the command, of the spoken word. And thoughts create reality. When you speak something, it's putting it into concrete. You know what I mean?
Well, and again, and I get that, and there's probably a dozen other questions that I could ask, and sharing what I already kind of intuitively know.
Mm-hmm.
But was the response that way because they, like you said, maybe it's just protocol that they just don't show them their faces, and or just in general. But you know, there's very, very few people that anybody's ever going to meet in life, I think, that says that they can say that they've seen the face of an extraterrestrial or another entity from another time, another space, another dimension, or even interdimensional or extraterrestrial. And, you know, and all these appropriate terms, because, you know, I think one thing I've learned from the Dogon is that what they would say is that the creation is full. There's nothing where there is nothing. Every place there's something in it, to include dimensions that we can't observe, that we just aren't capable, just like in our hearing when we talk about 432. And I know, Michael, you're well versed. I think you said that the human is capable of hearing decibels from 20 up until
20,000.
20,000. But all those other decibels outside that range exist. Just like, you know, we can't hear what dogs hear, but dogs hear what dogs hear, and their hearing is a lot more acute. We can't see what an owl can see at night, or predators, but they have better visions than we do. So just because we can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. And so, yeah, please.
You're bringing up a great point, because I'll tell you what people are going to have to wrap their head around is, you know, Bigelow Aerospace. Some your listeners might know. They're the ones that bought the Skinwalker Ranch, and Robert Bigelow is a multi-billionaire. He just went on 60 Minutes and he spilled the beans, you know. But what I want to tell you is in 2011, because of the Lake Erie UFOs, an investigator from Bigelow contacted me, and he said, "We know that what you're in contact with over Lake Erie is the real deal, because it's what we've been studying over the Skinwalker Ranch for 20 years. And he said they were called skinwalkers there because the Native American Indians would see these orbs of light come down, and they would take on biological life form, whether it was a giant deer or a giant wolf. So he also pointed me to the UK Ministry of Defense, and they had dumped a lot of declassified files onto the net, and it's kind of like trying to find a pin in a haystack, you know. But he showed me right where to look. Sure enough, this and I'll send you the link for your listeners, or go to michaelleehill.net as well, and I got all this info. But the UK Ministry of Defense said the real deal is these orbs of light, and they can divide, they can come back together, as you're saying. But he said exceptionally, that 3 of these orbs of light could come together and create one huge triangular craft that has been, you know, accounts for these triangular craft being seen all over the world. So what I wanted to say, first of all, the Bigelow investigator told me that these are not what people think of when they think of craft being made out of metal and nuts and bolts. He said they have more to do with portals and time travel. And it's the Anunnaki, I can tell you right now. And go type in John Alexander Bigelow or Skinwalker Ranch. And John Alexander is the gentleman who actually set up the contact between our government and Robert Bigelow. And they asked him, have you and Bigelow come to a conclusion of what you're dealing with? What's the intelligence behind the phenomenon? And he said, yes, we have. We've learned it's definitely in charge, and it's more complex than we would have ever imagined. And we have come to the conclusion that we're up against the trickster. Well, that goes right back to the Native American Indians again, the whole concept of the trickster and what it is.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Heyoka and all that. So, you know, this is not what people think of when they're thinking of UFO contact. This is way bigger and way beyond that.
You know, well, let me ask you this, because people like Bob Dean and others would say, and there's actually military documents that have been declassified from others. They say there are as many as 56 different extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings that are visiting this planet and have been since the 1950s, ever since we started playing with atomic and nuclear energy.
Yes.
So how would we know, like, the difference? How can you differentiate and know that? And again, I should ask this question: the origin of the Anunnaki. If we were to speak about, and I've got 4 books over here, my son's reading. You know, I've got Zachariah Sitchin's entire encyclopedia, or, you know, all of his books.
But matter of fact, just so you know, that's the NSA. They supplied me with Sitchin's library and said, here, you need a crash course. And the leader, A.R. Borden, told me that Sitchin was more correct than he even knew. And the Anunnaki themselves have told me that his, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's Illuminati and he was told what to say. The Anunnaki said, we've inspired him. His work is encoded for those that it's intended for, the spark cellular memory. So in a sense, that's correct, but it's way deeper than that, and it's nothing to do with the Illuminati.
No.
But the Anunnaki, you know, people need to know, you'll never understand the Anunnaki mythos without digging into the subject matter and looking into an individual. His name was Galzu, because Galzu was not Anunnaki, he was Pleiadian. And you find out that, you know, it's interesting that so many people throw the Anunnaki under the proverbial bus, but you ask them about the Pleiadians and they're like, oh, they're all peace, love, and good happiness stuff. And they don't understand half of the Anunnaki is Pleiadian through my side. I know that sounds strange, but after all of this, you know, when I met them in 2008, they had told me, now mind you, I didn't know what an Anunnaki even was at this time. There was no ancient aliens, but they told me they wanted to talk to me about what the History Channel had released about my blood anomaly. And they said it's truly an indicator of their hybrid bloodline on this planet, and that it was known in the past as the Nephilim, or the Nephilim. And I thought, well, I wasn't religious in any normal way like that, and I didn't know what the Anunnaki was anyhow, but they told me that I was once known as Ea, the water bearer. And I thought, wow, that's really makes no sense to me whatsoever, because you know, it didn't. But I can tell you, from 2008 until summer of last year, you and I talked about when I was invited to, it's actually a very revered ceremony for the Native American Indians, and everything came full circle. And I was really, I gotta say, it was from spirit. I know it sounds crazy, but you know, some people are familiar with the idea of having a synchronicity maybe happen once every other day, or that's kind of normal for me. Well, during this time there, it was like 20 an hour, you know, and they made it very well known about the Ea connection and the water bearer. So now things have come full circle.
You know, and you covered just so much ground. You know, the last 3 minutes of what you just said, we could probably spend another 3 days dissecting.
Yeah,
you know,
it does get deep.
Really, I mean, I had the I guess the privilege of meeting and attending a few lectures with Zachariah Sitchin before he died.
Oh, wow.
So when we talk about what he wrote about in his books, you know, and I shared it with my son. So we're reading about the 12th planet, and I'm talking to him about Nibiru. But it's not theory, because see, Zachariah Sitchin was taking things that were written in ancient Sumerian text and written in stone. And so people who can read Egyptian hieroglyphics, or the Medu Neter, as the Africans would call it, it's written in stone and it's been there for 5,000 years. And so when they have drawings of a solar system and there's another body represented there, and they tell you what it is, and they say that it's Nibiru or Nibiru. And I've talked to ancient aliens. Giorgio Saluskas and I had a couple conversations about this. But the fact is no matter what you think, and I like the way you say it in some of your interviews. You says this is not my opinion. It's a fact. It's right there.
It is what it is. And I think it's very important to see that this individual named Gelzu, he wasn't Anunnaki, but when he came, all of the inner core of the Anunnaki family, being the king, his name was Anu, and his two sons, Enlil and Enki, they all sat down and took counsel when Gelzu showed up. And that shows you they knew that they weren't at the top of the cosmic totem pole of intelligence, that they respected higher levels of authority, if you know what I mean. And so Gelzu is part of Enki's mother's side. And I don't know if you want to get into that. It's probably pretty important.
Well, I do, because I want to make sure that at least some of the building blocks that we're consistent and that our vernacular is right. For example, I've got Donna Cook here, who just texted here on my Facebook live stream. She said that her understanding is the word Anunnaki is from what she understands means those who from heaven, or those who came from heaven for the sky. And it was not limited to one extraterrestrial race, as I recall it. And I think Zachariah Ascension has really done a really good deal with it. And, with my background in ministry, I had to go back and research this because this is a paradigm shift for me as well. But the Elohim, I thought the Elohim meant those who from the heavens came. My first introduction to the Anunnaki, when I began reading the research of Zachariah Ascension and Sumerian texts, was that, on the planet Nibiru, the 12th planet, that there was a group of people on that planet. They were about 12 to 14 feet tall. And I thought that these were the Anunnaki.
But here's the deal. Anunnaki is our word for them. And it truly was a Sumerian word. And they were dealing specifically with this race they are extraterrestrials, but they were here on Earth for 400,000 years before mankind was. So it's not really right to call them aliens. They were here before we were mining gold.
Well, look at us. United States, we come and take a country and we tell everybody else who wants to come an alien. What kind of shiznit is that?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, does it?
Yeah, we call them aliens, and we were the first aliens here. We stole it from them. We call them anyway. So it's consistent, the language, and you're right. You said that's why the language is important, because so often language conspires to keep us separated. And if we get the language right, we can get the big picture right.
Well, I can tell you, first of all, as crazy as this sounds, tell your listeners to go to Google and type in Planet X found, and it was January 2016. It was released all over mass media, CNN, MSNBC, the whole spiel, that scientists released that they found this fabled other planet that is truly a part of our solar system, and it only comes around every about 3,600 years. I was like, hey, that sounds familiar. So this is getting out there. And
Zachariah Ascension was writing about that for like 20 years before that. NASA.
Indeed. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? But I'll tell you, they said that is our name for them is Anunnaki. Their own name of their planet is Saami. And the people of Saami are the Saamai. And Saamai, translated to the Western culture, is just Sam. So, like when you're dealing with people within the NSA and whatnot, they just call them the Sam. And A.R. Borden was telling me that the group within the NSA that was taking likened to contacting me was called the Labyrinth Group, but he said, beware, they're not all Sam. Just giving you an example of how he would speak about, they didn't call him Anunnaki, they called him Sam. But when I met them back in 2008, they said that in the very near future, there would be another celestial object visible in our skies, and it wouldn't be questionable. It's like, well, right there it is, And so truly what they wanted to do was have a council meeting. And it was very strange, though, Darrell, because up until a certain point, this was not a benevolent meeting with them. This individual that I was in front of, is truly on a spiritual level was here to reflect back a negative polarity. And he was totally in his bad cop role. There was death threats coming out and everything. And at one point he said, we need to know what you know because, you've been filming us and all this other stuff. So he took out this wand and it had a purple diode. I know this sounds crazy, but he pointed it at my third eye. I could feel it being stimulated. And I heard what was happening is they can go through and hit your Akashic records and see exactly who you are, every life you've ever lived or will live. And
last week's show was on Akashic records.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, my sister and I both went to learn how to read Akashic records when we began this journey like 6 years ago.
Right on. Well, we can talk about that because a lot of stuff has happened revolving around the Akashic records, and actually, before being known as Ia, man, I don't even know if I want to get into this. That intelligence has had a lot of different names that it's been known as: Ia, Poseidon, Neptune, Maitreya, Moroni. The Peacemaker. It just goes on. But back before Ia, I was told by them, because what you find out, man, I wasn't Christian at all, but there's a brand new DNA haplogroup that was just found in the late 1990s, and it's called haplogroup X2A. And your listeners, go type that in. The only place it's ever been found is right now, at least 3% of the Native American Indians have this DNA. But in the past, it was the tall skeletal remains that have been removed out of these mound sites. And then even further in the past, the largest concentration of haplogroup X2A was the hills of Galilee. This truly is the lost tribe of Israel. I'm not even religious like this. It is what it is. This is where the actual evidence goes. So what I want to tell you is, this stuff with this being the lost tribe of Israel, it starts to make sense that the oldest 10 commandments ever found on this planet was Newark earthworks, and it was removed out of a mound site. It wasn't Egypt. There's a menorah here that was in Ohio that was here thousands of years before Egypt. And you start to find out that the name Yahweh was known to the Cherokee and the Iroquois, and was known as this being who sat between these two councils of war and peace chiefs. And he's the only one that sat directly in the middle and had a seat on both councils. And he was known as Yahweh. And so it's really fascinating to start to understand that this is truly the lost nation. And it's really, this gets...
And we're going to have a follow-up, because I've got a friend named Donna Bell, she's affiliated with the Church of the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
But they have so many references, and I was so ignorant about some of the details about the Mormon Church and their connection with the Native American tribes, and they have flat out recognized, and I had to go back and read the Book of Mormon, and they recognized when the lost tribes of Israel was one of the tribes that left, and they came and they seeded here in the United States. And there's this recent reunification of the two brothers of those lost tribes with the Native Americans. And again, and you're right, we can go so deep so fast and go.
Well, I'm going to spill the beans right here. I'm not going to say, but you're amongst those two brothers at the Serpent Mound coming up. I'm Inky, and Enlil will be there. I asked him point blank, face to face. Spirits told me this is who you are. Is it so? He said, yeah, I've done some pretty messed up things. That was his first words to me.
You said, "Filled up my spine, brother." And I'm not in denial, because people like Big Bai, he's there, and Big Bai and I, we know this isn't our first rodeo.
Right on. Yeah, if you look, been doing it for a while.
He's been around it for 1,600 years, and last time when Big Bai was here last March, and I was driving to the airport after we left Serpent Mound. And I asked him, what was going on. And now he was trained by a very, very high level Dogon priest, the keeper of this ancient Kemetic knowledge. And he was initiated. He's the only Westerner that I know of. Matter of fact, he is the only Westerner who achieved that level of status as a U.S. citizen, that basically initiated into the mystery schools that were reserved for Egyptian high priests. And every pharaoh had a high priest. And for 2,000 years, this information has been suppressed until Master Nava came. And I've got his book here, and I'm showing here on Facebook, but the Philosopher's Podium. But even at the end of the day, I asked Big Bite, what are we doing? And he said, well, we're back here to kind of get it better than we did the last time we were here, But the idea of the reincarnated energy, and then what you just said, and the connection that we made, particularly the last time we talked. I mean, we went down, we were loading well shit in 3 minutes.
Yeah,
we were
man.
we were, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's my acknowledgement of just where where we
Man,
went.
I
And
appreciate you being there because I really I needed someone to talk to, and some people like to talk about spiritual awakening as being something it's just all smiles and giggles. What I was made the witness messed me up for a long time, and you're really the first person, and probably I haven't talked to anyone in that depth. So thank you for being there and being able to talk about that with you, Darrell.
oh man, and
Wow.
I never will forget
You
it.
guys are giving me goosebumps.
But I'll tell you what, you're absolutely right about the Mormons, which is a very strange thing to me because I'm not Mormon either, But the NSA said, if you look at the Book of Mormon, not as a religious text, but as the most accurate history book that hasn't been messed with by the Vatican, that's more accurate. And I can tell you, East Lake, Ohio is home place, and that's what we're going to be talking about here soon. And what I'm bringing to Serpent Mound is I've discovered an unknown earthwork here, man. It takes a mile to walk around it. That's how big it is, and it's still intact, and it's right here. And there's been artifacts that have been removed out of that already that sit in a museum here in East Lake that ties it to ancient Sumeria. It's the first depiction of what's called the Morning Star. It's like almost looks like the compass, like a four-pointed star.
And
But
just the listeners, so they know, because it's a matter of record, and I think Smithsonian has the records now, but there was at least one. And we talked about biblically, people understand the Nephilim, because the Nephilim is recorded in the Bible. So
Yeah.
people, particularly my religious friends, you can't get around this. It's there. And for my friends, it says, if it ain't in my Bible, I don't want to hear it. The Nephilim are in the Bible.
yeah,
And
so is the Elohim.
there you go, the Elohim.
Yeah.
And so one of the excavations that occurred at Serpent Mound, they excavated a skeletal remains of an entity, a body, a humanoid, and the measurements of the skeleton that was there was about 7 foot tall. And however, the bones had been removed from the knee joint down, so that was part of the 7 foot. So we're talking about a 10, 11, 12 foot skeleton out of Serpent Mound here in Ohio. Just one that we can talk about.
Yeah.
And so the Bible also says in that day there were giants in the land, men of renown. This is what our biblical or our sacred texts tell us, no matter what Bible you use. And again, when I use that term Bible, again, my understanding is broadened. We're talking about a collection of texts that, before King James put a compilation together of 66 papers, 66 different letters, and called it a Bible. Back in that day, all these sacred texts, whether it was Mormon text or what became King James version of the Bible. Well, Darrell Nichols' version of the Bible, I'm thinking I want to be a lot more broader and ecumenical. And all of these texts were existence of all of these different cultures. And so we need to take all these together. Now, a lot of stuff that King James didn't like, they were exercised. Matter of fact, they were banned in the United States until the early 1970s. But that was the Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden. And those answer so many other questions that are kind of relevant to other people, other cultures, our ancient ancestors' experiences. And so we got to be broad-minded. And I tell people this often, even Jesus Christ himself quoted things in the Bible that are written in red. But what he quoted were things that were excluded from the King James Version of the Bible. And so you have to go to the Lost Books of the Bible or the Forgotten Books of Eden to see what Jesus was talking about. So it gets kind of heavy.
Indeed. It's fascinating to me too, as we're saying, like you said, at Serpent Mound, there's this giant skeleton that was taken out of one of the surrounding mounds. And that keeps happening over and over. And you find out that this was this DNA haplogroup X2A specifically. But it's strange to me. I think it's an interesting talking point that there's no doubt about it. A few generations ago, this DNA were giants, and now we're not. I'm haplogroup X2A.
Well, let me dig a little bit deeper on haplogroup 2X. Are you happen to be Rh negative?
Yeah. You know what? A lot of people ask me that, and I can tell you that they didn't tell me on the History Channel blood work show. I mean, the show that they did my blood work on. What they had revealed was an increase of creatine kinase. Up until that point, man, I am the biggest baby, and it's almost like a phobia of needles. I do not like needles. I like giving blood almost makes me pass out, so I rarely do it. And I don't know my actual, if I'm type O or not. I just don't know. But I can tell you when the NSA took me in that they confirmed to me that, yes, I am of the Anunnaki bloodline, and I do believe that is the type O. But I don't know.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, because, there's a lot of indications that, particularly amongst the population of people who have had experiences with these extraterrestrial phenomenon, or even a lot of people that are related having these abductions, there's a high percentage that have Rh negative blood type. However, my feeling is that extends across a number of blood types, and so you can have these experiences, but I think that if you had that creatine that you're talking about, and even if you're O positive, that characteristic would show up in other blood types other than Rh negative. And then that's just my belief. I don't know that there's any empirical proof to weigh that argument one way or the other.
Well, if you want, I can tell you what I've learned from the Anunnaki themselves on this hybrid bloodline.
Please do. Please do.
They said that this all goes back to 27,000 years ago was the biblical flood, which was actually a pole shift, where the crust of the planet slips, and they didn't create it. Like a lot of people want to say the Anunnaki caused the flood. And that's not what the Sumerian clay tablets say at all. They said that the scientists found out that the crust was going to slip, and it was just a part of Earth's natural cycle, and that since we were off axis, the ice caps are going to want to relocate to the equator. So at this point, the throne had went to my brother instead of myself, because he was a pureblood, where I had a Pleiadian mother, and due to their own succession of kingship, pureblood got the throne over a half-blood. And as the story goes, him being Yahweh, he didn't like humanity very much, I guess would be the easiest way to say it. Didn't approve of the creation. But anyhow, at that point, he said, well, must be God's will, let them perish. And that didn't sit well with Inky. And Inky, instead of doing what he was told, which is, in their culture, that's your head. You know what I mean? Like, you disobeyed a direct order from a king, because what it was said was the king had told him to go remove the fish from the oceans, that if mankind was going to perish anyhow, let them perish. So, make a long story short, Inky went to his mother's side to help and asked if there's anything that can be done, and that's where the whole Noah's flood myth came from, but there's so much more to it. I think we're coming up on a break, so maybe we can get into after that.
And we could, because, and maybe when we do get there, the question would be, like, I've read what Zechariah Sitchin had said about that whole thing between Inky, and it's really interesting story. And maybe we will go there, but you're right. But I do want to acknowledge, we've got Shakira. Jen, how you doing? She's commenting on here on our Facebook live stream. I just want to acknowledge her. She'll also be at Superman with us here when we get there next week. And she was on my show here probably 2 months ago. But just want to acknowledge her, and she's giving us a shout out, and of course she's going to support us. But
nice.
Thank you for all that she's doing, man. But man, I just don't. There's just so many places we can go right now. But if I were to look at the topic of the blood types, and so what is it about this it's not creatine, is it?
Yeah, creatine kinase. What had happened is, the Anunnaki said, this ark, this making Noah's Ark, that's an interesting idea. It wasn't two of every animal. It was a DNA library. But using their remote viewing ability to look into the future, people might not know this, but in the Sumerian tablets, mankind was brought into, the Sumerian word is Eden. That sounds familiar. And truly what they said that was happening, some people like to say mankind was created as slave labor. They said it was more like pampered pets. We helped in the toil and labor of mining, but we were also very well taken care of, and there was no homeless. There was no starvation. And but because of this, the Pleiadians seen that we weren't evolving fast enough. We had no catalyst for change. And we can get into this because it's kind of deep, but, so they said, why even save this race if they're not going to be able to purge their, transmute their collective shadow work as a species by the end of this grand cycle. And so that's when another experiment came about, and that was to make mankind experience its own mental energy, reflected back in an unbiased way. Whatever you put out, you get back. But we can get back into that after the break.
Okay. And Steve's let me know now. We've got just a minute left. Again, I want to take a minute here, and I'll just address that, talk to our listeners. Then we're going to go to the break. But again, you're listening here to Steve, to the Darrell Show here on Truth Cat Radio. We got, just an awesome, I hope you enjoyed the conversation up to this point. But again, we got Michael Lee Hill, and we're talking about who he is, what he knows, where he's been. And we're going to talk about what our future is going to be like. So we're going to be talking about more of that here on the other side of the break, and we're going to be looking for your calls. So here we go. Steve, are you there?
Me? Oh, hi, Rochelle.
Hi, Steve.
Okay. All right, you guys, meet up. All right. Yes, this is Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. We are 100% listeners-sponsored, and this is our choice. We do this because this gives us the freedom to say what we want. But because of the fact that we do say what we want, sometimes we have to say things like, Truth Cat Radio is not responsible for the opinions and comments of the listeners, guests, or hosts. Those belong strictly to those people, and they have nothing to do with Truth Cat opinion or policy. Thank you. One of those things we got to do in this world. I'd like to say that after Darrell's show, we have Dave Robbins coming up here at the 10 o'clock hour Eastern Time, and his show is called Mystic Freedom. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock Eastern, we have Terry Joyce with Freedom of Choice comes on. And Thursdays, we start at 6 p.m. Eastern with Graham Sutherland with Delete the Beast. And at 8, we have Beyond the Matrix with Richard Carey. And at 10 p.m. Eastern is the Stephen D. Kelly Show, which you guys seem to enjoy. We come back on Monday with our live broadcasting, and we start out with our Metaphysical Monday, as we call it, at 6 p.m. Eastern with Violet Vision with Saba Wolf. And at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Shima Moore, who is in Shasta, but she will have somebody standing in for her, no doubt. Her show, of course, is Metaphysics and More. And after her at 10 p.m. Eastern is Joan Hangarter, a.k.a. Joan of Angels, with her show Angel Essence, which brings us back, of course, to the Darrell Show on Tuesday. If you want to be part of Truth Cat Radio in any way whatsoever, if you have resources to donate, physical or otherwise, if you want to get behind the microphone and do what Darrell's doing here and have a show, you need to contact me, Stephen Kelly, at you want to give me an email. Send an email to me at law17gun@aol.com. That's law17gun@aol.com. And do not use that for the PayPal. The PayPal, of course, is Stephen Kelly, Kelley, 714 @gmail.com. And do not send any correspondence to that. I want to also advise you guys, if you are not aware, that we do have a chat room that's open right now. You can go in there and sign up, create a screen name and join us, and you can ask questions that way of the guest or the host. And also, if you are interested, you can call us up right now. As soon as I'm done talking, somebody hung up. That's one right there. See, I scared her away. 714-598-3125. That's the number you call to talk to our friends here. Area code 714 598-3125. When Darrell tells you to call in, it's so much better. I'm going to have him do that again. Darrell. He'll shame you into calling. Also, if you have not joined our Truth Cat Radio Facebook page yet, what are you waiting for? Please do it. I know you're on Facebook. It's not that big of a deal. Just go there, hit the little button that says like. That's the Like word. And you will get our little advertising that we send out for shows like this one, the Darrell Show. And then you can help us out by sharing it on your Facebook page or groups you belong to, or with special friends that you have that you think would benefit from this fun material. And that way we'll get more listeners, and we'll get to be able to share our message with more of you. And that's what we're here for. So if you could do that, we'd really, 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 really appreciate it. And I want to remind you guys all one more time that you are listening to, whether you're listening on Darrell's Facebook, you're still listening to Truth Cat Radio. That's right. And it is August 8th, 2017. It is halfway mark right now through the Darrell Show. And once again, we want to all thank you. Oh, one last thing. If you're on Facebook and you're listening to the show on Facebook, please give us a thumbs up and a nice little comment. Say hi, something like that, a positive comment. We love those things. And once again, share it. Share it, share it, share it. Thank you so much.
Well, all right. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, and thank you. And thank you all of our supporters for Truth Cat Radio and for my Facebook fans that are following me on Facebook. And again, I want to say hello to Shakara Tashe. All right. That's my sister from Serpent Mound. So I see you, want to acknowledge you. You should call in. And again, I'm going to show y'all here. I got a number. Y'all need to call in here on the second half of the hour. We're going to take questions. And again, I got Michael Lee Hill as our invited guest here tonight. And the conversation just can't go on long enough. I just can't wait to see him in Serpent Mound. But the phone number, if you want to call in, you got a question or a comment, call 714-598-3125. 714-598-3125. And I got to give kudos to my sister, Sis, my wonderful co-host, and I'm going to let her lead out because, she's kind of like my benchmark. She's kind of like lets me know where we're at and where we're at in the conversation. She's like the peace broker in how we're breaking down information, how we're relating to our audience. So how we doing, Sis?
Jupiter, Pluto, maybe a whole other dimension. But yeah, I mean, and it's cool because you two share so much of the like knowledge. But then I'm lost. I'm like, this gray matter is trying to learn. But I did have a question. Earlier, you guys were talking about how the media came out and said that we discovered this planet X. And that's real. But what was the connection with Planet X and the Anunnaki or Michael yourself? I mean, you threw it out there and then you guys went somewhere else really quick. And I'm like, but what did that have to do with anything?
It is Nibiru. Planet X has been known as Nibiru. It's truly it's a part of our solar system, but it orbits way into deep outer space around a star. They found out that all solar systems are truly binary star systems, but sometimes, as you know, a star will go dark, become even a black hole or whatever. Well, our companion star went dark long ago, but all of its mass is still there. The only planet that revolves around that dark star is what we call Nibiru, or Planet X, and that is what they've revealed to the world back in 2016, that our scientists have discovered that there is this other planet that is truly a part of our solar system. And they just haven't, I've heard Bob Dean actually said he made it to the UFO Congress last year, and his health is ailing, and I wish him the best. But he said the truth of the Anunnaki and Nibiru coming will be revealed later this year. That was from Bob's own mouth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, elaborate, because if we were to, and what was really significant about it, and it relates to several other things, but Zecharia Sitchin was writing about these based upon what he deciphered from reading the ancient Samaritan text and reading what was carved in stone on walls, and it's still here today. And so we've got cultures in Samaria, which is where writing was born, actually, over 5,000 years ago. And they're talking about another planet that was part of this solar system. And Zachariah Sitchin called that Planet X. And he was been writing about this since the late 80s. And so, like in 2016, for NASA to come out, again, because, science, what they teach us in schools, they said there's only X number of planets. That's, as far as heavenly bodies, there's only 11 in the solar system. But Zachariah Sitchin's been saying for 20-something years, no, there's 12. And he wrote a book. It's called The 12th Planet, or Planet X. And so for NASA, when we finally got our telescopes trained and we have a better understanding of astronomy and cosmology, cosmic neighbors, for them to confirm what somebody else said was there 5,000 years ago was pretty revolutionary. And now, if you even backstep from that, 1950s, there was two French anthropologists. Marcus Grail was the primary one's name, but they were spending time talking to the Dogon at tribes in Africa. Because, again, back during the Pharaonic period, when there were pharaohs, every pharaoh had a high priest, and all these priests they're called Dogon. And Dogon had been teaching this for thousands of years. It's been known. And they understood time and cosmog. As a matter of fact, I never heard of the word until I started reading in the Philosopher's Podium. They not just cosmology, but they call it cosmogony. Cosmogony, a whole different branch of science that we don't even practice here in the United States. But they've known about these celestial heavenly bodies, and not only that, we have a binary solar system, but they said that when we look up in the sky and we see the brightest star, we call it Sirius. They called it the dog star, but it's Sirius. But they even said then, in 1950s, they said that Sirius, although it's a bright star, it's not the only star. It's got another star, Sirius B. And they said as big as those two stars are, there's another star in the middle of them, and they called it Po. And Po means in their language the tiniest little thing. And Po was holding these other planets, these other two stars in rotation. And they said that even to this day, I still subscribe and I order the Kemetic calendars. And by the Kemetic calendars, like this year, it's not 2017. In Kemetic terms, because they never went to the Gregorian calendar, this is year 417, 417. Because they said that 1 year or one cycle of time, it takes 52 years, because that's how long it takes for our sun to rotate around Sirius C, Po. And so they had this deeper understanding that was taught to them. And the irony of this, and we're talking a little bit about extraterrestrials and these things, but they said that they didn't just sit down and figure this out. They said that there was a group of people from another place that taught it to them, and they called them the Nomos, extraterrestrials, who were kind of like water type of beings. They would come out of the water and they would teach them by day, taught them culture, civilization, philosophy, all of the arts, and then they would go back into the water and come back the next day. But they said that they've had 27,000 years was the first recorded period when they said that the first extraterrestrials came that they had in contact with, and they learned all these things from them, which is why, Plato, Aristophanes, Euripides, all of the Greek philosophers, all the great minds that are attributed to this knowledge out of Greece, but all of the Greeks went to Africa to get this knowledge and came back with it. And it came from the Nomos through the way of the Dogon, who received it from people who weren't necessarily, at least we would say, extraterrestrial.
It's interesting. I'm sure you know this, but the Anunnaki side of the family tree, not the Anunnaki / Pleiadians. The Anunnaki are Syrians. And I didn't know this, but that's where I met them first in 2008. It was called Sirius Rising.
Whoa. You just made me sit back in my chair, brother. You just made me sit back in my chair.
Yeah, I had no clue. But the Syrians are the Anunnaki, and the Pleiadians are, what happened was the king of their world was named Anu. But he had, this is heavy what happened, because they said everyone knows that the Anunnaki came and they genetically tweaked this primate that was indigenous to this planet. But what people don't know is that primate was a Pleiadian soul carrier that was just at an early phase of its evolution. And that doesn't mean it wasn't going to evolve to become Elohim or a wingmaker anyhow. All of us go through the whole cycle of evolution from simple cell all the way up to me and you talking, all of us talking right now. So it's a little bit deeper than what people know of, and I don't think a lot of people know that. I think that's why Anu had a Pleiadian queen, because of course she would be very interested in what was happening to her children, and it was her children that were being genetically modified and tweaked, and so the Pleiadian queen and King Anu had a child, and his name was Ea. And some people know him as Inky, but we'll just straighten that out. That Inky is a title; it's not a name. Just kind of like the Dalai Lama is not a name; it's a title. So it's En means Lord and Kai means Earth. So Inky was Lord of the Earth, and his brother Enlil was Lord of the Sky, and Lord Lil Sky. And matter of fact, it's pretty interesting because I found out it's Enlil's side who are the eagles, the eagle mythos. Even more accurate is the phoenix. It's Enlil or Yahweh who sits with a gavel overlooking mankind evolving for all of this time, for 27,000 years. And he holds the right to grant the phoenix to the whole human race. And the phoenix rises from the ashes and becomes something new and way more beautiful. And you said what's in the near future. That's what's in the near future, because all coming information is we've made it as a species. Guess we'll leave it there.
Upcoming futures, we made it as a species. And
Yeah.
really, that's heavy. And there's a few layers I know in there. I don't know if we want to go there, but I would like to, maybe we can kind of move the discussion to, okay, well, what's ahead? One thing that is in my heart to share with you or to bring into the discussion, and my sister can kind of relate to this, because several years ago we were doing, she asked me to do, I think, an Akashic reading, and I learned about some other healing modalities that I just say I downloaded. Came to me. But what I saw was, in her particular case, I saw, science says that the human DNA, they know what some of it does. They know what 3% of DNA does, because they got the genome and they're mapping the human genome and all that. Wonderful. But they still say that 97% of the human DNA is junk DNA. But what I saw is that because science can't explain it, they just dismiss it. But I see we're in a period where I see those DNA switches being turned on, and human abilities, spiritual abilities that we had not mastered before are available now, where they weren't as available before. And we're moving into a period where even more and more of those abilities are being awakened. How does that resonate with you?
It's right on the money. I can give you an example that at the Star Knowledge, where I was given my spiritual Indian name, which is Rainbow Warrior Eagle, the woman who gave me my name, she crossed this group of people, and she came up to me and she pulled up her sleeve and she said, she pointed up, they want you to know that everyone here is of the bloodline. And she pointed to her wrist, and she had this tattoo. I've come to learn it's called the Fleur de Lis. It's
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
she had it on her wrist, and she pointed to it, and she said, everyone that's here is of the bloodline, and they're here for you being recognized as Ea, and it's so nice to have you back, Inky. And she was in tears. And I thought that was very strange, because she's never called me Inky before or after this. And so about an hour later, I walked over to her, and I had this really desire to see that tattoo. I said, "Can I see your tattoo?" And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "That spade-looking tattoo you had on your arm." She goes, "Michael, I don't have a tattoo." And she pulled up her sleeve, and she did not have a tattoo. I'm like, what the hell? Because, man, this was just like someone walking up to me and just going, "Hey, you want to see my tattoo?" It wasn't like I was channeling or anything. So what I want to tell you is I got a chance to speak to one of the grandmothers. You probably met her too, grandmother Silverstar. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm talking to her, and I said, "Grandmother, if I may, I got to ask you." And I told her that experience. And before I was done, she had the Star Symbols book open, and it was the future sight. She said, "Michael, what you're experiencing is future sight, and it's your DNA is being unlocked, and there is no Western words for what you're experiencing, so I can't explain it to you." She said, "I have future sight as well, but I don't know when the actual experience will manifest into 3D from when I experienced the future sight." And it's just one example of it's not junk DNA at all, and a lot of us are being activated. Our DNA is, and strap yourself in, I guess, because it's kind of bizarre.
All right. Well, sis, she chuckled on that one, so I'm going to give her the next question or comment.
I don't even know where to go. I kind of enjoy just being the fly on the wall because, oh my God, you guys are just massaging my gray matter.
Well, remember the conversation we had when, I was talking about I received the modality of a Shate healing, but when we did some work with you, and I was talking about DNA and how DNA switches are being activated and turned on, and that was like 5 years ago.
So, Michael, do you have any, how can we help them help us?
That's a good question. Man, more than anything, I think enjoy your life and don't buy into any of the fear that's being pumped through the media. Teach by example, and really, what else is there more important than being happy and appreciating this life here? I know sometimes it looks pretty ugly out there, but man, what I've learned is go down and watch a sunset or go into a park and just really realize we're blessed to be here right now. And, focus on gratitude, because I think a lot of us have learned how to pray incorrectly. And, they say never pray for patience, right? Because what you get is a bunch of experiences that try your patience. Or in the same way, if you say, I need money, what you get is the experience of wanting money. I think truly the only prayer in Creator's eyes that's valid is a prayer of gratitude. And when you just realize and be grateful that we're healthy right now and we're having this discussion, and, if you place your mental energy on being grateful, you'll have more things to be grateful for that manifest into your life.
Good.
That is so well said. I was just this past week, ironically enough, I have a person that I work with who texted me over the weekend, and he had lost two of his best friends in a car accident. Two young men, 20-something years old, and they're gone. He's feeling the pain of losing his two best friends just in a moment. And he's focused on that, but I asked him to focus on the gratitude that at least, he had the experience, and he knows what the loss is to have two people that you cared about. And the translation of that is now go out into the world and be grateful for all of the friends and the relationships you have, and don't take the next minute for granted. And don't be salty and bitter and go to bed mad at somebody, because, if they're gone in that next moment, you're going to regret that. But be grateful for the relationships you have, and then appreciate it and celebrate.
Perfect.
And I have another coworker. I was up late last night. Matter of fact, I only slept 2 hours last night. I had another supervisor that I worked with was having some difficulty and pain, and he went to go see the plant nurse. They put him in in an ambulance, and sent him to the hospital. It just reminds you just how fragile life really is, and you can't take the next moment for granted. But at the same token, you've got to show up in this life, and then to be authentic and be as real as you possibly can be, because you just got this experience here. Now we can come back and do it again if you don't graduate, but the idea is to just be authentically you while you're here and celebrate those relationships that you develop. The Comedics philosophy taught me that, says that we are only human beings through other people. No one survives alone. And so, but it's only through our interactions through other people that we evolve. And that's part of what the experience here is all about. And the quicker that we all can evolve together and we can approach, I think what A.R. Borden was talking about, and I love what he said. Matter of fact, I did a show, at least one, on the 3% principle, that 3% of the population can achieve this level of thought, this level of being, then that's the tipping point. It doesn't take 50% of the population in order to switch or to facilitate that shift. If we can get 3% of the people there, then things will shift. And I didn't think, but that was a great segue to get into A.R. Borden. But I love that idea.
Right on. He told me that was the most deep secret that's been kept from humanity, is it doesn't take many of us to start resonating in a higher frequency, more love-filled. And once 3% of us, a lot of people have heard of the 100th monkey. And if not, just type in 100th monkey, you'll come to that story. It's a story about scientists who were studying these monkeys who had a food source of potatoes, and they would dig them up from the sand, and some of them would have sand on it. And as the story goes, they said just number-wise, say there are 100 monkeys. Once the 6th monkey taught the 7th monkey, and they were being watched 24/7, not only did the 7th monkey start to wash its potatoes in the ocean, but all of the monkeys, even the ones that weren't taught, it like spread throughout mass monkey consciousness. But there was another group of scientists that were studying another group of monkeys on a whole entire different island, and all of those monkeys simultaneously at that exact same time all started washing their potatoes in the ocean. And the 100th monkey put it at 7%, but AR said no, it's only 3%. It only takes 3% of us to start resonating in a higher way before it spreads throughout the mass consciousness. And I could tell you, before he passed, he said that we've made it. Even to be to earn a bigger spot on a galactic council, we needed to hit that 3%. And we're over it now already. So it's kind of like just watch going from reality A to reality B, and seeing how it unfolds now. I think it's going to be quite interesting.
So when you say reality A, reality B, are you talking about timelines?
You could look at it that way. I'm talking about, there's a lot of prophecy regarding an upcoming 1,000 years of peace, a golden age, the age of Aquarius. And we truly entered the age of Aquarius was December 21st, 2016, not 2012. So we're barely through the gate. And we are now officially going to enter and become a galactic society. So all of the institutions of our culture that aren't for the whole, if they're just for a few elite oil and banking families' wallets, those systems got to go, man. They're not that's not how things work in higher levels. And so we'll see their temples fall. But the good thing is that there is systems waiting in the wings, and unlimited free energy and way better ways to do things for humanity. There are just waiting. And, I keep asking, what's holding up the party, And they keep telling me over and over again, timing is everything. And I'm getting it. I'm learning to be patient.
So, Michael, can you paint a picture? What is this galactic society, and what does that look like?
It is a society very much like Native Americans used to have, which is, people don't know, but the Iroquois still to this day have the oldest functioning democracy on this planet. And people don't know this, but it's like a country within a country. They still own Salamanca, New York, Niagara Falls. And when you travel through there, you'll see a sign that says you've now left the United States of America, New York, and now you're under Seneca law. The Native American Indians, like for one instance, they knew younger people were perfect to have children, on a health level. Even in the 20s and 30s, they're perfect for giving birth. But at the same time, we're still children when we're 20 or 30. For the Native American Indians, it's the elders who had the responsibility and honor of raising the children. Didn't mean that the families couldn't spend as much time with their children as they wanted, but it wasn't their responsibility to raise them. It was the elders. So that gave the elders reason and respect and honor throughout the whole tribe. And that's just one example. It's truly learning how to work in harmony with even nature. You know, one of the grandmothers showed me how the bloodline came into the North American continent, and pretty much they knew not to overtax land. And but beyond all that, I think the golden age is going to be more beautiful than anyone. Imagine humanity being able to look into its creative desires and impulses, and not be forced into this economic slavery system that we've been a part of. I think it's going to be glorious. And it does get into the Templars as well, and King Solomon's treasure, which is interesting because one of the first things you and I talked about, Darrell, was King Solomon. Yeah. But you find out that the Templars were the ones who were responsible for the safekeep of the Sangreal bloodline. And that's exactly what we're talking about. You find they're the ones that brought the bloodline back to America like 2,000 years ago. And some of this is even coming up in that show, America on Earth, with the hooked X and all that. Some of your listeners might know what I'm talking about. But, you know, the Templar treasure, if they brought the bloodline back here that intertwined into a tribe of Native American Indians, and which first became known as the Iroquois, and the Iroquois still have their own country, their own land in New York. Well, I'm pretty sure we know where the Templar treasure is, and it's truly to free mankind of the Federal Reserve and this system. That's why it's been kept, you know, for all this time in safekeep. So if we did make it, which we have, we would have the means to get through this time period. And the same can be said, it's the exact same with King Solomon's treasure as well. You know, the Templars are the ones, and it's really fascinating because, like I said, what I'm bringing to the table is East Lake, Ohio, is the actual location where they first set up home base. And the oldest street in our area, and again, go to michaelleehill.net, look into my blog, and you'll see something on it. It says Lost Nation. You'll see it's a street name. Just click on that. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. The oldest street in this area is called Lost Nation. And my mom worked for the city, and she told me, you know, a long time ago, this gentleman came in and said, you know, that's just not arbitrary, that name, that there's truly, this was the site of a lost nation. And when you get to the end of Lost Nation Road, and it then ends onto Lake Erie, if you take a left within 1 mile, you're at the first site of the Mound Builders. And this place had walls that were 660 feet long with a large pyramid. But if you take a right, it was actually written into the street names what happened to the Lost Nation. And the first street you come to is Tioga, which when you look into it, it means entry place, peaceful valley in Iroquois language. And then the next street is Cherokee, and then Iroquois, and Seneca, Seminole, Mohawk. The last road is Thunderbird, and you'll find out that there's two different bloodlines. There's the Serpent clan, and then there's the Thunderbird clan of the Mound Builder clan. And so it's all written right there. And I can tell you, I just met with Graham Hancock, and the reason is his next book is all on the Mound Builders, and them truly being the lost civilization that he's been tracking down. And he got it right away. I showed him these photographs. He goes, oh my God. He said, as someone's been trying to delete this information from humanity, someone was making sure it was recorded right in our street names. It's like they left the treasure map, a map right in the street names. So it's pretty cool. And what I just discovered, I grew up in this area, and no one has ever told me that there was still an intact earthwork here. And I got a call from a guy from the Smithsonian. He said, you know, there's still an intact earthwork. And I said, no way. Yeah, 1970s, we did an excavation there. He told me where to go and how to find it. Sure enough, there is a still intact, perfect earthwork, and it takes 1 mile to walk around it. It's 5 minutes from my house. It's like, how could this happen? You know, fun stuff.
Man, I think you have a video. Didn't you shoot a video of that site?
I took some photographs up to this point, but I did just invest into some nifty new equipment, like a stabilizer for the phone to take really cool video and whatnot. So I am going to be going there very soon and making some video of that. And like I said, to the point of, you know, I'm going to start making some videos so people can just go and check out, like, here's everything you need to know on the Lake Erie UFOs. And so they can go and see that. And so I can start talking. I just, man, I'm getting tired of me. You know what I mean? It's, I'm, you know, starting to feel like I'm in, what was that movie?
Inception?
No, yeah, but yes.
Yeah.
Being John,
Day.
Yeah.
or I was going to say being John Malkovich, where it just, you know, after telling your own story over and over, it kind of gets boring. And I would love to just, you know, people can go to michaelleehill.net and I'll have like an introductory video 1, video 2, video 3, video 4, and then we can just start having a conversation from a new perspective.
So what's next for Michael Lee Hill? What?
Man, that's a deep question. It truly, you know, I was given my name Rainbow Warrior Eagle, and there is a prophecy that is through the Native Americans, and it is the Rainbow Warriors, and it is a walk of people who, I can tell you, this is really interesting because one of the grandmothers, after I got my name, she came to me and she said, I want to talk to you about your name. She said, you are the rainbow we've been waiting for. She said that truly what the rainbow designation for the Native American Indians means is that there's a double tetrahedron within each chakra. And she said that when they're balanced and cleared and spinning freely, they emit light. And they emit the colors of the rainbow, from red in the root to purple in the crown. And to those of them that have the gift of sight, as she put it, that you've become the whirling rainbow. And because all your chakras are emitting their rainbow spectrum of light. And so truly it's a designation of those who have cleaned their chakras. And they said truly no extra manifestation ability from spirit is ever given to anyone until the 7 seals have been broken. Because if even one of them is unbalanced and you're given extra manifestation ability, well, you're just going to go to what you still haven't cleared yet, and you're going to create the worst shit on earth for yourself. So it's like you got to clear those things, and we all can do it, and we all are doing it. But that was the rainbow designation in their terms. And then I was told that the eagle at the end is the nation that gave you your gift of your name. And I was told by a dear friend of mine who just passed away, is Chief Blue Star Eagle. He got a new name, but I'll always remember him as Chief Blue Star Eagle. Chief Golden Light Eagle's brother. But he had told me that that when I pray now under my gift, my name, which is Rainbow Warrior, that my prayers will go to source with great enthusiasm. So that's a little background on that.
Well, you got the ancestral spirit working on your behalf, and maybe a few other things that we're still trying to come into some understanding of. But you mentioned something. You mentioned the double tetrahedron. And I on my Facebook, I threw up my I thought about Merkaba.
Yeah, it is the Merkaba. What she told me is every chakra has a Merkaba, double tetrahedron. That spins in the middle of each chakra. It's interesting, huh? I didn't know that.
I could tell you the story of the Merkaba, and my sister knows it, but that'd be a whole different program. But yeah, ever since I've discovered, or I guess to say the Merkaba word came to me, I didn't even know what it was. I had to go. My sister found a conference. Said, well, I don't know what that word means, but I found a guy that's going to be talking about it in Los Angeles. It was John Melchizedek.
Ah.
And then it was a few months after that, after I found out what the word meant, that I was at another conference, and somebody else, I was walking past this thing in a display case, and it just called my name, and nobody would buy it. And so after 3 days, I said, for the amount of money they were asking, I said, I don't know if I really want it. But after I said, if it's still here on the last day, I'll get it. And I did. And I haven't really, I really take it off. And that's been like 6 years. But I've learned about why that word kind of found me. And so, and I'm just a convert into the power of a merkaba. You tie that to the tetragrammaton and a few other things. But so I'm glad you're talking about the double tetrahedron. And
indeed.
I don't want to digress, but
no, it's a cool thing because the Rainbow Warrior prophecy says that there'll be many of us that arise of many different races and different creeds, and it'll be proven through our actions that we're more interested in mankind than our own wallets, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that these people will rise and make the earth green again, which I can tell you, the Sioux, the Standing Rock Sioux, have already went before the United States government to get unlimited free energy cold fusion technology that has been proven it's the real deal. And because, with the pipeline issue and all that, which I don't know if you've seen, that it was just announced that their civil rights were messed with, legally. So a lot's going to happen with that. And I think it brought the worldwide attention that these civil rights issues were still ongoing to this day. And so you asked me what's going to happen in the near future. And that is, for one thing, people will find out that our founding forefathers went to the Seneca, Iroquois, to base this form of democracy, we the people, on their own form of government, because they had united their tribes where we wanted to unite these states. And the whole Constitution and this form of government was created by being taught by the Seneca, which is, no one really knows this, and I think it's pretty mind-blowing. But for about 70 years, everything was cool. And, we got along, the European incomers and the Native American Indians. There was no genocide going on, is what I'm saying. But during that time, many treaties were formed, and they had the signatures of people like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, and pretty much the same things that have been allowed to the Seneca in New York, such as they don't pay income tax. They don't, there's no sales tax. There's no taxation on businesses that you start and whatnot. That isn't just in Salamanca, New York. It belongs to anyone that even has a drop of Native American Indian blood. And right now there is already a new old republic that is set up. And you don't have to succeed from the United States. You can have joint citizenship, but legally what happens is you are part of a new nation that you don't have to report back to the Federal Reserve. They have their own rainbow currency, they call it. These are already things that are done, and they're waiting for people to go and start to access. I'll tell you the name of the website. Let me go here. It's probably pretty important.
Well, recently it's about people to access their value, using their Federal Reserve accounts.
I've heard of that. Yeah, I've heard some people saying that that's a real thing as well. I've never looked into it. But what I'm talking about for your listeners, type in the United States of America 1781.com. 1781.com. I'm going to say it one more time. The United States of America 1781.com. So what I can tell you is this is all revolving around the Native American Indians being recognized as a sovereign nation, and truly a sovereign nation that has had its civil rights violated by a hostile takeover of what has become the United States of America. It was never intended to be this way, even by our founding forefathers. And it will have a lot to do with first contact, because we're talking about the mound builders being the Nephilim. And, again, people that are putting the Anunnaki and the Nephilim under the proverbial bus, it's going to, when you learn that Inky's bloodline comes in through the Native American Indians, that's exactly what's not being taken into account. And a half truth is no truth at all. So.
And you're absolutely right. And, that's one of the challenges that we have. It's been the imbalance of power, and actually the abuse of power. And to the extent that other people might go, other groups might go to hide the dirt that they've done, and until we make that right, well, I guess that's the dispensation that we're in, where this the revealing of truth, the revelation.
Indeed, you're absolutely right. That's exactly. I have some correspondence between United States, some high-ranking people, and the Iroquois lawyers, and pretty much they said that they know that they can't go around policing civil rights issues with this in the closet of the United States, the worst genocide on this planet. And they also know that with what the military has been used to do under false pretenses and go around the world bombing places for things that truly had nothing to do with these people. Iraq was never a threat to us. They had, the same with Afghanistan, Vietnam. You can just go back in time. That the only thing, because it's getting so bad that the United States is hated so badly by many other countries now that it doesn't matter who you are, even if you're on the side of light or dark or whatever, you're an elitist, whatever, none of us are safe anymore. And they feel that one of the only things that could remedy the situation is for the Native American Indians to be recognized as the true owners of, the Native Americans truly are the people who should regain their land. And, for one thing, too, from above, they know what to do with these mound sites to put their mental energy, because mound sites were where ley lines cross, and the most energy, cross there turns into a vortex, right? So it's very important for the people that know how to use these mound sites and vortexes of energy to reclaim these areas. So nothing will bring mankind into the golden age faster than Native American Indians starting to be able to use these sites for what they were intended for, which is what we're doing at Serpent Mound.
Exactly.
Yes.
And again, it's for everybody that, if you don't understand, when we talk about ley lines and vortex energies, our ancestors understood the way that this planet is constructed better than we do, and how we kind of work in harmony and in balance. But there are these ley lines, or these energetic patterns across the planet. Every single sacred site, from Serpent Mound to Mount Shasta to all of the pyramids, all of these sites somehow in the earthworks, they're on ley lines. And it happens at Serpent Mound, if you live in the Ohio area, it's one of the most powerful ley lines, in my mind, where you can have these profound experiences where you are energetically connecting with the source of your being. Everybody from Earth is an earthling, and we derive our power and our source of energy from the Earth. And there are these energetic centers on the Earth where these expressions of energy are amplified. And so that's why places like Serpent Mound are powerful places to come and to place your prayers or to leave your intentions, to have these collective gatherings. We were talking about this 3% and how it only takes 3% of a population to actually provide the tipping point for any direction that movement's going to go. Well, you can go to these ley lines and you can energetically amplify all those expressions and those intentions. And so I would challenge you, if you're not doing anything, and if you are doing anything, come to Serpent Mound. Come to Serpent Mound, August 19th, 20th, and 21st, because we need it. Like I said, none of us survives alone. We are people through other people. And so Michael Lee Hill can't do it by himself. I can't do it by myself. My sister can't do it by herself. I often quoted as saying, it takes teamwork to make the dream work.
Yeah.
So Michael, can I ask, because I remember watching the citizens hearing. I don't know if you're in tune with that, but one of the things they brought out is when people have sightings of these UFOs, a lot of times they were around like nuclear plants or like these ley lines. So what's the attraction there? Are they refueling, or are they doing it because that's where we can see them most? Or
Yeah, from what I understand, where there's vortexes of energy, you could almost think of them as on and off ramps of a galactic highway. You know, those higher energetic places is where they can come and go, and their native state is these chariots of fire or these plasma orbs. This is, in my opinion, like I said, this is Bigelow Aerospace, who owns Skinwalker Ranch, and the UK Ministry of Defense. And you know, it's all of the above. They use them as on and off ramps, but then once they get here, it looks like a lot of them will follow the ley line. It's like they tap into that energy source. But it's really interesting because you'll find with the Native American Indians, they never lived at these spots. There's no evidence that they ever, you know, food or eating utensils or fires being there, because the truth of the matter is they knew it was a vortex, which means it's going to amplify whatever you bring into it. So they knew not to bring in dark energy. So they would make sure they sage and do ceremony and dance and get their head straight before they would go into those places, because they didn't want to bring any dark thought forms there. And now, you know, here in Eastlake, the one site, which was the original site I was telling you about, that's knocked down now, and they have a school that sits right on top of it. It's haphazardly, you know, poor kids are going to school, probably having the craziest things happen. But we need to learn about how energy works and start to learn from these ancient, you know, the Atlanteans. What we're going to find out, this gets pretty deep, but, you know, the whole 432 subject, the mathematics, it's encoded into the mound dimensions and layouts of like Newark, Ohio. There's actually hundreds of sites that were through Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. And they've been trying to guide us into these 432 subject matter through the actual mound sites themselves. So we got a lot to learn from our ancients.
You know, I'm going to do some homework on that too, Michael, only because of the significance, the mathematical significance, let alone the musical significance. And again, I'm holding up the disc, your 432 hertz disc with the image of what that looks like, and the significance of that, again, because it harmonizes.
Yeah, dude, it blew the scientists away that actually they call it a cymoscope, which is, they're the leaders in the science called cymatics. And they said, we've used this technology to image everything from dolphin noises to people will have their first baby noises, you know, commemorized or whatever. I don't even know if that's a word. But that they said they'd never seen that kind of complexity or dimensionality from anything that they ever used this equipment to capture. And they said that they think it's because I recorded my A note, which I made sure it was tuned properly to 432, but it was through my Joe Satriani guitar amp. And they said, you know, guitar amps are one of the only things that still use vacuum tubes. And they were thinking it's what that tube is doing to the signal to create that distorted Jimi Hendrix kind of sound. Isn't that funny? They're like, rock and roll saved the day.
Yeah. Well, you know, the irony of the thing, even as magnificent as that is, but if you look at what it's doing on a functional level, not only does it sound better, and then all the science behind why they went to 440 in the first place, and as I understand it, Hitler even used 440 hertz because it has a disquieting effect where it kind of keeps people restless, insecure, a lot easier to control.
Yes.
So it's like it was a deliberate plot to keep us away from the 432. But
and I'll tell you, I met an Arcturian ambassador, and he said, Michael, you know how the ancients gave us this idea of multiplying or dividing whole units by 12. And he said, let's take the 440 and divide it by 12. And you can do this yourself. What you'll get is 36.6666666666. And it's not random. And it's pretty strange because you find out 432 divided by 12 is a perfect 36, and 3 and 6 is 9. But he said, look at that. 440 is 36.66666. He said, it's pretending to be sacred geometry while still being an imposter. That's pretty deep.
On one of your websites, Michael, you mentioned one of my favorite people, only because I met him. You could be one of my favorite people too, I'm sure, after I meet you. I already love you. But Nassim Harriman, fascinating guy. And I love Nassim because even though he talks about head-hurting stuff, he has, I told him I think of him as an educator because he teaches you, but he makes sure you get the point. Like he talks to like he's talking to like a third grader and breaks it down and breaks it down and breaks it down. And when he's done, I think I can talk about quantum physics,
Right on. I love Nassim.
But he's awesome, totally awesome. But I know he had said something about your music and your guitar. And what was that?
What it was actually he took my 432 image that Darrell was talking about that I infused into these crystals and necklaces and whatnot. He took it under his wing and wrote a really nice paragraph on it and released it through his Resonance project.
Yes,
and it's kind of cool because it's kind of grown its own wings, so to speak, and it's got over 3,000 likes and shares, and it's kind of cool, man. I could see like some extraterrestrials up above going, hey, how come there's this 432 image spreading all over the planet?
Well, I wish you could have been there because last February, Sherry was in LA. And so it's amazing that from Ohio, I meet her again out in Los Angeles, but she had the disc. And so I introduced her to Nassim Harriman and Eric Pearl. And man, it stimulated a lot of discussion. And the other thing I like about Nassim Harriman is he comes to my little private suite parties. I'm in LA. And so we can have this one-on-one dialogue. And it just, you can imagine Eric Pearl, Nassim Harriman, Big By Injanima, Mazad Singh, and we're talking about all of these things. And everybody's got a little piece of the pie. But the more pieces of the pie you come together, you got.
You had Maxwell up in there too.
Yeah, Jordan Maxwell and Sean David. So it just.
I love Sean. Yeah.
Sounds like a great group.
It really is. Next year, you got to come out to LA in February.
I'm in.
Life Expo. All right, you're easy. All right. But I got to begin my wind down. But Shelly, I just want you to know that our cousin Martha Tobert, she said, "Is that Shelly?" Just blinked twice. So she heard your voice in there. And I've got to we got a lady who has been so active here on the Facebook live stream, Deanna Cook. I've been looking at some of your comments, and you are just phenomenal. I wish you would have called in. She's just very knowledgeable. A lot of comments, a lot of questions. I'm going to be happy looking her up. And I may have to bring her onto the show because she's got a lot of stuff up under her hat there. So I'm watching you. And she's saying she's heard that Sedona is a really potent vortex. Yeah, this girl's all over the map. Even when we were talking about the Federal Reserve and money and stuff, she sent me some stuff that highly technical people have been involved with. But I will say this, for other people who are playing around with this idea of accessing your funds through Federal Reserve banks, I was looking at that for a little minute last month in early July. If you're playing around with that, do your due diligence. Some people who were pioneering that effort are in prison today. They're in jail today. They've been incarcerated for over the last week. So it's not what you think it is. So when somebody calls you and says, yeah, just use your Federal Reserve account with your Social Security number and get the bank routing number, that's how it works, but you could end up in trouble because it's a lot more complicated than that. And so the people that were leading this effort, I'm just cautioning people. I don't have all of the expertise. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I don't want to see you get in trouble because of what you don't know.
Hey, Darrell, I have one more question for Michael before we go.
Guys, it's time. You got 3 minutes before I shut everything off, so it's time for his final words. Was about 2 minutes ago. It's time for Darrell to say thank you and station ID and all that fun stuff.
Any other day, Steve, you would be like, hey, can you guys go over? Because I got a blank space, but not today.
Well, unfortunately, I got a show right after you. But otherwise.
All right, well, sis, I'll defer you my last 2 minutes. Do your thing.
No, because I doubt that he would make this plug himself, but I noticed like you actually make your disc available for people, and there's a lot of different ones out there. I just want you to make a plug for them, tell them that they're available, and how do we go about picking what might be right for us, or do we just let you pick?
You know what? MichaelLeeHill.net, go to my shop section, and all the ones that I'm making right now do include the 432 image. And the 432 Inky, I think, is probably the Swiss Army knife of them all. But, man, if one resonates for you, that's the one for you. So check it out.
This is my favorite, the Master Alchemist disc. I had to have it. Yeah.
Right on.
All right. Well, Michael, I'm going to head on out. Reserve it. Do you have any closing comments as we end our program here?
No, man, just thank you for so much for this chance to talk and share, and hallelujah.
And amen. Man, love you, brother.
Love you too.
Brother. And I mean that probably in a more sense than you alluded to earlier. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing you at Serpent Mound.
All right. And we'll be talking probably before then, but we definitely will hook up at Serpent Mound. You and I, Bobby, Big Fi, Mazatsi, whoever is there. But thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and information. And for our listeners, thank you from them for supporting us and for tuning in to Truth Cat Radio tonight. We'll see you in a week from tonight at 8 p.m. Next show. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, sis. Thank you, Stephen Kelly.